In addition to the biological explanations that we explored as to why people commit violence, there's some important psychological and sociological theories that are offered as well. So when we talk about the psychological explanations of violence, what we're referring to are the various feelings and thoughts that we have that are related to violence or that may lead to violent behavior. So what we're really discussing here is kind of a person's mentality. So this could include things stemming from, a deeply rooted mental disorder or a trauma, but these also could be things like your personality or a certain stress that you're experiencing. Now, perhaps most notoriously of all of these is this idea of antisocial personality disorder. You might be unfamiliar at first, but you certainly are not in reality, which is if you've ever heard of psychopathy or sociopathy, these are both now fall under what is referred to as APD or antisocial personality disorder. So these are people that have very low levels of empathy, if at all. They do not experience any form of guilt, which opens them up to hurt others and harm others without feeling any sense of remorse, right? Whereas a normal person that does not have antisocial personality disorder might lay in bed at night thinking about, the way things that they did or said that day and how that affected those around them. Somebody with APD isn't going to think like that. And so for them, violence doesn't have the same level of consequences that it does for people that do experience guilt, do experience empathy. These people lack emotional depth, meaning they can't really put themselves in their shoes. Okay, and they're driven very much by self-interest entirely. So their actions and every decision that they make is done to help them, to benefit them. So if it happens that it harms somebody else, if somebody that doesn't have APD is behaving a certain way and it harms someone, even if it benefits yourself, you're still going to feel bad about it and it's not going to be as beneficial. Whereas somebody that has APD, they can harm others as long as they're getting what they want and working towards their end goal. It doesn't affect them the same. And sometimes this is referred to as moral insanity. Okay, this doesn't mean that they don't understand the consequences of their action, because they do. They understand, oh yeah, I hurt somebody, but they don't feel like, oh man, I hurt somebody, right? It's more just, oh yeah, that they hurt. It is what it is, right? And so the other thing about APD is that if somebody with antisocial personality disorder engages in violence, there may be some inherent gratification within that. Okay, and so there's a few reasons to why that is. And the first of which is rooted in this idea of sadism, which sadism is when people derive derive pleasure from harming others. So sadists their benefit of committing violence or gratification they get from that is simply inherent in the violence. Okay. The next is that some people have a rush of doing something that's so risky and so dangerous and potentially destructive, but they get away with it, right? And so that rush can be appealing and can be gratifying in and of itself. And then finally, violence can be gratifying because it can be a means to revenge, right? Or to get even, especially if somebody attacked their self-image or attacked a person's self-image. And, imagine if somebody came up to you and was just talking all this smack in your face, telling you how horrible you are, telling you that, you're incompetent or whatever it might be. And then after hours of them talking to you, you get to hit them in the face. For some of you, you're like, well, I'm not really violent. That doesn't do anything for me. But some of you, I would think at least one or two of you are like, oh, that would feel good. Right? And you might not have antisocial personality disorder, but you still can see how that might be gratifying. Now imagine if you don't have any of the guilt of, oh man, that person was talking smack, like I feel bad because I hurt them. Okay, a person with antisocial personality disorder isn't going to experience that same kind of guilt. Now it's really critical to keep in mind here that not everybody with antisocial personality disorder becomes violent. And likewise, not everybody that is violent has antisocial personality disorder. Okay, just because you have it doesn't mean you're doomed to be violent. And just because somebody's violent doesn't mean they have it. Okay, that's very key to remember. But certainly they are related. The next psychological explanation is this idea of the frustration-aggression hypothesis. And this is pretty straightforward, and I feel like it's something that most of us have experienced in our everyday lives. Okay, so this begins when we are blocked from achieving a goal. So whether that goal is, getting a good grade on a test, or getting an offer in on the house you want, or getting taken out on a date, or whatever it might be, getting a raise at work, whatever, right? And we're denied that. And once we are denied that goal or access to our goal, we experience frustration, right? When you just want like, That feeling, right? That's frustration. We've all been there. Okay. And what that does, so this hypothesis goes, is that frustration we experience creates and activates this drive to be aggressive, right? Which is why sometimes when people, especially if you look at toddlers, you'll see this, right? Little kids, when they get frustrated, if they don't have the words to explain why they're frustrated, what do? Fling themselves on the ground, arms and legs go everywhere. They lash out, maybe they throw a toy. They get mad and they act out. They don't just get frustrated and sit with their frustration. No, that frustration manifests into a behavior. And unfortunately, we're not that different from toddlers. We might have the words to explain it, but sometimes we feel frustration and it manifests into behavior. Okay, and so that drive then creates that behavior. Okay, and it's a pretty clear-cut explanation or clear-cut path when you think about it like this. But certainly not all violence is related to frustration. Okay, there's other means. So this is a really useful tool for understanding why somebody who's experiencing frustration becomes violent, but it certainly doesn't explain all violence. Okay, and the last psychological factor worth noting is stress. Okay, if you've ever been extremely stressed out, which being that most of y'all are college students, I'm sure you've experienced stress. Right? You know that it impacts us in significant ways. You might not be able to sleep. Your eating habits might change. Your general mood and demeanor shifts. Okay, when some people are really stressed out, they'll gain a lot of weight. Some people will lose a lot of weight. Right? And there's no really rhyme or reason because your body is essentially in a state of fight or flight. Right? When you're really stressed out, your body is going, okay, what do I do? Do I get out of this situation or do I go hard at it? And that can be a difficult emotional experience for a person. Okay. And, a certain amount of stress is natural. It's normal and it's healthy. But when people live in situations where they're exposed to prolonged periods of stress, so we're talking about a year or more, or even a month, right? That still can damage your ability to cope with the strain or the stress that you're experiencing. Okay, and now imagine for kids or people that have been in abusive relationships or kids that grow up in an abusive household. We're talking years and years of living in stress. And that has significant adverse consequences on a person's ability to react to threats or to other, outside stimuli. And so the idea is that prolonged periods of stress diminish our ability to cope. And if we can't cope, if we don't have healthy coping mechanisms, then we might react to experiences of stress by lashing out and behaving violently. Okay, I think I've decided that for your sake, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to make a new video for sociological explanation. So this is all on psychological. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, I will see y'all next time.